Yes, indeedy. What up, everybody? Happy hump day and welcome to another edition of Giants Collective. As always, I'm joined by Adriana, Anthony, Entertainer. How we doing, everybody? Hope you had a great week. I know I did. Well, half the week was great because I was on vacation. Now back to reality and working a 12-hour day today and jumping right into this. It's great. Life is awesome. And the Giants are not awesome. But we do have some things to talk about tonight. And we'll just get right into it because obviously the Matt Stafford thing is picking up a lot of steam. Now, for me, obviously when you hear these rumors about, the Giants are interested in Shedeur Sanders and like this guy with the draft, there could be a lot of smoke. There could be a reason to do that. You want to throw teams off, kind of want to keep them off your guy or whatever. There's a lot of games that go on. I don't know why there'd be any smoke with this. I don't know why they'd be faking this. Who are they trying to fool? What are they trying to do? It doesn't make any sense. So obviously there is, somebody said it right in the chat, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's definitely smoke with Matt Stafford because I just looked at the two things Anthony said, where they said they're hell-bent on making a trade, and it seems to be their top priority in this offseason. So, Adriana, we'll start with you. I'm just going to ask you this. If the Giants do acquire Matt Stafford, we better not give up a third overall pick, or I'm going to have a Daniel Jones-like reaction. I can tell you that.
Yep.
How much better does Matthew Stafford make the Giants?
Listen, I think he obviously upgrades the team, and at the quarterback position, based on what we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years, this is an upgrade. I don't think anyone is going to deny that. But the reality is that he's a bridge quarterback, and he's a very expensive bridge quarterback. He's 37 years old. He had been talking about retiring previously, and he's coming to a team where I still just don't understand the appeal for him. I don't know what Joe Schoen is saying to him to get him in the building. And if they get him here, Joe Schoen must be the best used car salesman that exists because he did a hell of a job with getting him here. But I just think it's wildly expensive and it's kind of reckless. And I just feel like it's going to be 2022 all over again because, okay, we're going to have a better quarterback outside of Daniel Jones, right? But okay, let's say we magically win a couple games this year. We're not a playoff team just with Matt Stafford, and the schedule is insane. So, okay, maybe we win 7 or 8 games. Great. Then what do we do the following year? Hopefully they draft a quarterback who's going to be a backup to him. But still, you're not signing Stafford for a 4-year deal. The guy's 37 years old and severely injury prone. So why are we giving all this up to win for 1 year, maybe 2? And realistically, we're not going to be a playoff bound team just because of him. You are talking about everything having to go right for the Giants this offseason and this season for it to be a success. And based on what we've seen so far, the likelihood of that happening, in my opinion, is slim to none.
Yeah, not a lot of good is going well. Not a lot of things are going well for the Giants here in the last couple of seasons, that's for sure. And to your point, everything did go right for us in 2022. All the balls bounced the right way. We got a lot of breaks. We stayed relatively healthy, and they overachieved, and we've been paying for it ever since. Anthony, what does Matthew Stafford do for the Giants? Obviously, like Adriana said, it's an upgrade, but does he make us any kind of contender?
He makes us a better team. I don't know if he makes us a playoff team, though. I think that it's a really tough division. You've got 2 teams that are bound to make the playoffs in the Eagles and the Commanders, and I really just think there's way too many holes on this roster for just a quarterback to elevate this team into playoff contention. Now, I understand that Jaden Daniels did that last year, and CJ Stroud did that the year prior, but the common denominator there being those were rookie quarterbacks transforming a new organization. I don't see it with Stafford where he steps in and he just makes his team that much better. They still need to upgrade the offensive line, the defensive line. The linebacker core could use some help. Pass rushing specialists, they need depth there. The secondary is honestly a mess in my opinion, and they still need playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't think that Stafford can elevate this team quite that much. But at the end of the day, are they a better team? Absolutely. How many wins would they get? Maybe a maximum of 8 in my mind, and that's not enough to make it to the postseason. And I think that does more harm than good in the long term, unless Schoen is here for several years to keep building through his process. But honestly, I think that this team needs to, we heard that Mike Garafolo said there was a playoff mandate given to Joe Shane and Brian Dable at the end of the year from John Mara. If that's the case, I don't see how Stafford gets you into the playoffs. And then I think you're a middle of the road team. And then you're in a middle of a road offseason when you need to be in a full rebuild offseason the following season. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Stafford comes over here. Cooper Kupp comes with him. Maybe they end up winning a lot of games. It's totally possible. I just think that's a really, really tough path to get there.
Chris, how much better does Matthew Stafford make the Giants?
Yeah, I think Adriana hit on most of the points I was going to say. Yeah, I don't think he doesn't make us better enough. Let's put it that way. That's why the move never made a ton of sense to me. But it kind of goes back to the question I asked you guys last week when I said if you were in Joe Shane's shoes, because that's how I'm thinking from that perspective, even though I disagree if they do it. What does he feel gives him a better chance to retain his job and keep building the football team? And if he feels, like Anthony said, hitting that 8-win ceiling, which is what I think is reasonable if you get a Matt Stafford and you add some pieces in free agency, does he feel that gives him a better opportunity to keep his job and continue to build? Or with the heat that has been presented by John Mara, maybe he hasn't come out and necessarily said playoff mandate, but he hasn't exactly made him feel like, his job's safe, right? So if he feels he's only going to win 4 or 5 games with a rookie quarterback, he may feel the better opportunity to continue to build this football team is to go out and trade for a Matt Stafford, even though I think it would be a horrible decision and a selfish move on Joe Shane's part, especially with where this team is. At the end of the day, if we add Stafford, at best, we're the 3rd team in the division. At best. And that's not going to win you any Super Bowls. So what's the point if you're going to give up draft capital for a 37, soon-to-be 38-year-old quarterback? Doesn't make any sense to me in terms of building this team long-term. And I understand that Shane wants to keep his job, but as a fan, I'm not in love with the idea.
To Anthony's point, if that playoff mandate was given to him, then obviously he would feel that I feel better with a guy that's won a Super Bowl recently, has been in the postseason a number of years. He obviously is a veteran. He's a future Hall of Fame quarterback. And obviously Shane will be believing he's going to give him a better opportunity to go to the playoffs and win 9 or 10 games as opposed to just starting a rookie quarterback right out of the draft or getting a guy like Justin Fields or Jameis Winston, who I think we would all prefer to just, if you're going to get a bridge quarterback, get somebody like that, where it's not costing you an arm and a leg and it's not costing you a lot of draft capital. So I don't know, man. This really is picking up steam. We did this a couple weeks ago. I was like, it's just BS, a lot of crap. And it doesn't seem like it's a lot of crap. I mean, I don't know, man. The Giants do some funky things, and Stafford would definitely be an upgrade. But again, to all your points, not good enough. And there's no future in Matt Stafford. So it's a desperation move. And unfortunately, Chris, you mentioned it too. You don't agree with it, but when you're in his shoes, desperate times call for desperate measures. There's no question Joe Shane is in desperation mode. So God only knows the man is a loose cannon this offseason.
Yeah, I could at least rationalize if I was in his shoes saying, if we win 8 games, I get to keep my job. I get to keep building my football team. If I draft Shedeur Sanders when we win 3 games and we have to fire Dable, I'm probably out. So thinking about it from his perspective, I could at least understand why he would do it, but I think it's the wrong decision.
Speaking of Shedeur Sanders, go ahead, Adriana. Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll pose this question based on the Stafford conversation. If we're taking the reports that the Giants are hellbent and that their top priority is to trade for Matthew Stafford, if they're at the scouting combine right now and trading for Stafford is their top priority, what does that say about their opinion on the quarterback draft class? You're picking number 3 overall. That's where you should be finding your franchise quarterback. Shouldn't that be your top priority? The way that I'm starting to interpret this with the more news that we get about the New York Giants and their connection to the Stafford trade and this whole idea, it's starting to read to me like the Giants aren't big believers in this quarterback class. That's how I'm starting to perceive it. I know that there's been the long documented love for Shedeur Sanders, which, as I said in last week's edition, I think that's just fabricated through algorithms and media attention. I don't really think that they have this overwhelming love for Sanders or Ward or anybody. I don't think they've had their minds made up. But if their top priority is to trade for Matthew Stafford, I don't know. If you're picking number 3 overall, I think that should be finding your franchise quarterback there should be your top priority. But if you don't believe in those quarterbacks, maybe you would have to look elsewhere and make that your top priority. So I'm curious what everybody thinks about that.
No, it's a great point, and I'll let them answer because I actually had a question about Shedeur Sanders. So it kind of leads me into what the next discussion was going to be. So
I'll let Adriana go first, and then I'll speak.
I think it's a really interesting point, especially based on the way that Joe answered some of the questions, that he was going to look under every rock and tree to find the right quarterback, and they were going to implore trades and free agents and all sorts of stuff. And he also was adamant about having a veteran quarterback in the building. So I think all of those things are all fair points that back up the point that Anthony made. So I think it's very interesting. He also pointed out that there are other quarterbacks outside the top 2 in the draft.
Mhm.
And when he was at the Senior Bowl, he was looking pretty closely at guys like Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart. So I don't hate it if they don't go quarterback at 3. I mean, if Cam Ward is there, that's who I want. But I if they're not sold on him, they're not sold on them. So be it. I just am a little concerned about giving up the ship for Matt Stafford, but
yeah, I could see it meaning one of two things, Anthony. Obviously, yeah, 100%. It's obvious if you're picking 3, you have an opportunity to draft a quarterback. You're not really in a place to compete for a Super Bowl, so that's probably what it means, that they don't love a quarterback. But to go back to the other point I made, it could also mean, in my opinion, that Joe Shane feels pressure to win now, and he doesn't believe that a guy like Shedeur Sanders is going to win him enough games to retain his job. In which case, both things are horrible. And in my opinion, if Mara was going to do this and he was going to make Joe Shane feel this way, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I was for bringing Shane back under the assumption that you were going to give him 2 years to build with a rookie quarterback. If you brought him back for him to feel the pressure to have to win 8 or 9 games this year just to keep his job, then you should have fired him this offseason. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's why would you hold his feet to the fire? The Giants can't put. They were 3-14. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? You think all of a sudden you're going to go 14-3 with a team that's been regressing, a team that's been good 2 years out of the last 12? You think all of a sudden they're going to find some magic bean and you're going to climb this beanstalk and find this giant? See what I did there? That's just going to turn the franchise around. That's not going to happen. So yeah, it's kind of, listen, John Mara, loyal to a fault, doesn't want to fire guys. I get it, but like you said, Chris, if you're holding this guy saying you got to make the playoffs, or you're going to get fired, you're setting your team up for failure, and you're setting the future up for failure. Which is why we've been in this terrible tailspin for years, because I really don't know what direction they're going in. Yeah. When Joe Shane got here, I thought they had a concise direction, and I look at it and I go, do they really? Do they really know what the hell they're doing, and how much is Mara interfering, and what the hell is going on? And this is why we're 3-14, and we start talking about the draft in October. It's sad, is what it is. And speaking of the draft, Anthony, I'll start with you. It came out, Shedeur Sanders isn't going to partake in the underwear Olympics. He's not going to go in there. So I was thinking to myself that when I see this, you could be the number 1 overall pick. You have an opportunity. The top 3 teams need a quarterback. I would think you at least are interested. Do you think guys like Shedeur Sanders do you think the Giants have already reached out to him and said, listen, if you're there at 3, we're going to take you regardless? In this way, Shedeur Sanders says, I'm not going to go to the combine. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm not going to have my draft stock fall. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to do this or that, knowing that the worst he can be is 3. Do you think that type of thing plays into these guys not going, that somebody's already reached out to him and go, if you're there at 3, we're taking him, knowing he's not dropping farther than 3?
I think there's an element to it, but I don't know if it's at 3. I think that there is a certain floor that he feels he has somewhere in the first round. I think everybody pretty much knows he's not leaving the first round. And if that's the case, if you're definitely going to be drafted in the first round, you're going to get that fully guaranteed multi-million-dollar contract with a 5th-year option. You really don't have a whole lot to gain from throwing. Either they're going to want you in the top 3 picks or they're not. And I don't think that throwing the ball at the combine is going to change their minds and make them select you in the top 3 picks. I think, you can look at recent examples in past years. I guess Baker Mayfield helped himself when he threw at the combine, as did Josh Allen. Josh Allen wasn't necessarily a top 10 pick. He threw the ball like 70 yards, and all of a sudden he was a top 10 pick. So I guess you could find those specific examples, but that draft class was very unique. And I don't think this is one of those unique draft classes where we've got some special hidden talent. I think everybody knows kind of at a baseline level what Shedeur and Cam are, and I think that they probably have some assurances that they'll go in the first round. I don't think that it's necessarily the Giants saying we'll take you at 3 if you're there, but I think they feel comfortable enough not to have to go out there and add any unnecessary risk when they know the very least be first round draft picks.
Yeah. Chris, is there any way that they could improve their draft stock, do you think, if they went out there and threw? Or obviously it's what I'm trying to say, low reward, high risk type of thing for those guys.
I think for these two quarterbacks in particular, they don't have much to gain from throwing in the combine. It's not a scenario where they don't have a lot of, like, there's certain quarterbacks where I feel like Trey Lance, for example, didn't have a lot of game tape. It could make sense for him. These guys have played 30, 40 games at the collegiate level. Like, these guys have seen what these guys are. I don't feel like, and I actually thought Joe Shane, even though I know a lot of people hate him at this point, I listened to his press conference actually pertaining to this topic. I thought he had a good point that he said those quarterbacks, they're not accustomed to throwing to these receivers, right? So that has something to do with it too, right? You're more comfortable at your pro day with wide receivers that you're accustomed to throwing to. You can put your best foot forward there. So I don't really see much to gain for either one of these quarterbacks. I never thought they were going to throw. I at least opened myself up to the possibility that they could when they unexpectedly played during those bowl games. But if I was in Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward camp, especially based off their circumstances, I don't think I'd be throwing either. I think the much more valuable thing for them is going to be what they do on the chalkboard when they get to talk to the coaches in the interviews.
Yeah. Adriana, what do you think? That's the whole reason. Do you think we're ever going to see any of these guys that believe they're going top 5 partake in the underwear Olympics anymore? It's just also like the bowl games now where these guys just, well, I got nothing to gain, I'm going to sit out.
Yeah, I feel like as these pro days to continue to become a thing and they're spoken so highly of with the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, like there's all these other things that I do kind of feel like once players get to the combine, the quarterback specifically, it's just kind of like, what's the point at that point? Like it seems like the pro days are way more important and weighed more heavily. And when you have GMs, and I don't know if Joe really feels like this or he just said that, the fact that he doesn't deduct any points or whether or not they throw at the combine, it doesn't really change his opinion or how they weigh their draft stock, things like that. It's kind of like, what is the point? If it's not really affecting you and, unless you're a second rounder and you feel like it really can make that much of a difference, I feel like a lot of guys are going to go against it and decide probably not to do it all that much in the future.
Yeah. Chris, here's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, I'll give you something I can see the Giants doing. Let me know if it sucks or not. I mean, it doesn't. If it sucks, you can all let me know it sucks. You can let me know it sucks in the chat. I mean, I'd be no different than Joe Shane. Let's be honest. I'm going to say they go after Matt Stafford. They give up a future second-round pick and not a second-round pick, this third-round pick this year. I forgot what I read, that they were like a third this year and a second and third next year or something. Say it's something to those lines. They go out, they trade for Matt Stafford. They draft Abdul Carter third overall and take Jackson Dart with their second pick. Because if the Giants have this quarterback, they're going back up into the first round. They'd be silly to sit at 33 and not get the 5th-year option on the quarterback. Is that something you could see them doing? Getting a guy like Matt Stafford, drafting a Travis Hunter or a Abdul Carter 3, and then getting one of those other second-tier quarterbacks like a Milroe who is going to partake of the combine or a Jackson Dart. Would that be a good scenario for you? What do you think?
I mean, I could see them doing it. I'm going to continue to say I'm going to be consistent. We're drafting Shedeur Sanders. It's what I believe. I'm not changing my opinion on that. But could I see them doing it? Yeah, of course, especially with all the rumors and everything's coming out. I will say reports came out that he talked to Tom Brady, so that there's something there too with the Raiders. I know as Giants fans, we're just focusing on Stafford to the New York Giants, understandably so. We don't care about the Raiders. But, yeah, is it possible? Sure. And if they were to do that, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be consistent again. I've said it for months. I think Abdul Carter's going 1 for all the reasons that I've talked about with the Tennessee Titans, with the new GM, the new head coach. They don't feel the pressure to draft a quarterback at 1 overall. So I don't think we're getting Abdul Carter. I think he's going to be the first pick. I think the second pick will more than likely be a quarterback, and we'll see what we do at pick 3. But in your scenario, if you trade for Stafford and you're able to retain your first pick, which you have to think we would.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Overall pick. Yeah, I think you either go Carter or Hunter more than likely with that pick. And at that point, my preference, I don't think I'd want to draft Jackson Dart in the second round. At that point, just keep building the rest of the roster. Like, if you don't love a quarterback to take it up at 3, you're not going to sell me on loving a quarterback enough to take it 35. Like, just keep building the roster. Take the best available player with that pick. That would be my preference. I don't view Jackson Dart as a guy like a Lamar Jackson, when he fell in the draft with like an immense upside of that level. So that would be my preference. If you're going to balk on the quarterback and you're going to trade for Stafford, just keep building the rest of the roster.
Oh, John, what do you think? If they go out and they do get Matt Stafford, are they going to draft a quarterback with their first pick, or you think they would address it down the line or not at all?
I'd be shocked if they do that. I think the best case scenario is that if you get Stafford, that allows you to go best player available at 3, and you have to do that if you're Joe Schoen. Like it's not, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, but it's not Jaden Daniels at number 3. So you're talking about guys that, yes, they're good quarterbacks, but they're not as good as if this was if this was last year's draft. And Joe Schoen, of course, saying that, he likes to take swings at the quarterback position, then by all means, Joe, draft Jalen Milroe in round 3, and then next year get another quarterback. Like that. Do you want to talk about taking swings at quarterbacks? I'm fine if you want to do that, but you sure as hell better not get Matt Stafford and then get Sanders at 3. I think that would be a nightmare, especially if Carter or Hunter is there. Like that is going to piss off some of the fan base, me being part of that.
Which they will be. One of them will be.
Yeah.
More than likely. Yeah.
But he takes swings at quarterbacks. Dude's had his bat. He's had his bat on his shoulder every time he's been there. Who was he drafted?
Hasn't drafted a single one.
I mean, exactly. What do you mean I take swings at quarterbacks? You didn't take one swing.
How many was a swing?
He struck out looking a bunch of times. What the hell is he doing? Anthony, I know you do a lot of research on these quarterbacks. I know you do a lot of research on these guys. I know you have good scouting report on these guys. Do you think that's feasible? If the Giants did go out and get Matt Stafford, is it possible they just take BPA at 3 and address the quarterback later in the draft? Do you think they're going to still go quarterback at 3 if they took Matt Stafford, or if they traded for Matt Stafford?
If they trade for Matt Stafford, it signals to me that they want to win now and that they feel as though they can. So I don't think they would take a quarterback at number 3 overall in that scenario. I think that they would take Travis Hunter. I agree with Chris. I think that Abdul Carter is going number 1 overall to the Titans. In fact, I actually think there's major ramifications to that, because if the Giants have a quarterback that they want to draft at 3, well, you have to worry about the Browns at 2. And the Browns absolutely are, I think, going to take a quarterback. If you want to trade up to number 1, you have to assure somehow to the Titans that they're going to be able to get Carter at 3. And with the Browns picking there at 2, if the Giants take the quarterback that they want at 1, they might take Carter at 2, and the Titans might not get their guy at 3. So the Giants, I think, are going to be forced to stick and pick at number 3, as badly as we might want them to trade up to 1 and get Cam Ward. I don't know if the Titans are even going to be willing to risk trading down, because they might lose out on Abdul Carter. So I think that's something that you have to think about. And I think if the Giants do trade for Stafford, they're going to go best player available. And I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback at any point. I think, like Shane said, he takes his swings. He hasn't taken a swing, but I think he perceives his free agency swings and misses as swings. So I think he'll just trade for Stafford, and he'll keep drafting for need and, keep trying to plug in holes with rookies who are not qualified to be full-time starters just yet.
You brought up the idea that you think the Browns are definitely taking a quarterback, which I agree with. I saw rumors this week, a couple of days ago, now that we're at the Combine, that the Browns are very interested in Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders may have said that he thinks the Browns are going to take him. I read that from a few places. Here's my theory on that. I'm going to continue to say there's no way Deion Sanders is letting Shedeur Sanders play in Cleveland.
I think so.
I think if this is true, and if Shedeur Sanders is leaking this, I think he's trying to manufacture that he would be open to going to Cleveland to try to get the Giants to trade up to 1, so he's the first overall pick. That's my conspiracy.
That's quite a theory.
That's my theory on that.
I'll add on to that. You say you don't think that Deion would let him play for Cleveland. I kind of agree with that. I also don't think Shedeur wants to sit. So if the Giants do trade for Stafford, I don't think he's going to want to go to the Giants at number 3 overall. And I think Deion's going to say no, pass on him, take Travis. And I also think it's important to note, the assumption is that the Giants are going to all of these Colorado games to scout Shedeur Sanders and that they love Shedeur Sanders so much. Same team as Travis Hunter. Why wouldn't they take him at number 3 if they trade for Matthew Stafford? Maybe they were there because they were so enamored by the unicorn of the draft class, which is Travis Hunter. Totally possible. So, yeah, if they trade for Stafford, I think it's going to be Travis Hunter at number 3, and I think he is going to be there. So
we're talking about all these draft possibilities. We're back.
It is fun. It's a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's insane, because the Stafford thing is blowing my mind, because I really feel like it is picking up a lot of steam. And again, it just doesn't make sense. This isn't like a game where they're trying to throw somebody off to staying off their guy, because why were the Giants getting a bidding war? Why, they must really be interested in Matt Stafford. They must really think that he can make a difference. I don't think we're a quarterback away. He would obviously be better than any quarterback we've had since Eli retired. I don't think there's any question about that. But again, he's a 37-year-old guy. He's had injury problems. Our offensive line is certainly not a finished product. And but Stafford and Malik Neighbors, and it might look good. And also there's obviously talk about Cooper Kupp getting released. Maybe you bring Cooper Kupp over here as well. And that way Stafford has some familiarity with one of the receivers. But I don't know what the Giants are going to do. It's a very interesting scenario. It's crazy. Adriana, what do you think the Giants would have to give up to get Matt Stafford? We probably discussed this before, but like, what is a realistic? I'm not giving up number 3. Screw that.
Yeah.
What is how much do you think it takes to get Stafford to the Giants? Like if they're talking with the Rams, what do you think the Rams are asking for in return?
Well, I'm worried that if the Giants and the Raiders are serious bidders, that the Rams are going to take advantage of that and ask for a haul. So, I mean, I would be fine giving up a third this year and, maybe a third next year. But I'm not giving up a second round this year. I'm most certainly not giving up a first this year or next year. I'm not giving up the 34th pick. I mean, throw Jalen Hyatt in the mix. We'll take Cooper Kupp. Like I would take the two of them and maybe think about, I don't know. I would be open to trading Kayvon too. I think maybe there's certain players that you could throw in as a package deal to that, but I'm not giving up anything earlier than a third rounder. And I'm afraid that the Rams are going to try and take advantage of that. And I just hope that the Giants are smarter than that.
Anthony, what do you think it takes to get him here if the Giants really want him? What do you think they're willing to give up?
What they're willing to give up and what they should give up are probably two different things. I think somebody threw it out there. I don't remember if it was you or Chris or whoever. Somebody said the projected third and I think future second. Yeah. That sounds about right to me. Or is that for moving up to number 1?
No,
I don't know. There's been so many.
That was for Stafford. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But I feel like, as Adriana just said, with the Raiders getting involved now too, it's probably going to be a second round draft pick. And I think that makes sense because when Aaron Rodgers was traded, I believe that was for a second, maybe even 2 seconds. And I think that Stafford now is probably a better, more desirable player than Rodgers was at the time that he got traded to the Jets. So if he was 2 seconds, I would think that's your baseline, and it probably costs 2 seconds to bring in Matt Stafford. My take on this is that the Rams are only doing this just to create a negotiation. It's just a negotiation tactic. I really don't think they intend on trading him. I actually think this is very similar to when the Baltimore Ravens franchise tagged Lamar Jackson and told teams it's a non-exclusive tag. You are free to negotiate with him. Nobody did because they didn't want to do the contract groundwork for the Ravens. I think that's what the Rams are trying to have happen here, and I think that is what's happening. I think it's now going to become how much are teams willing to pay you. We will match that offer, but we don't want to bid against ourselves and accidentally overpay you. So that's where I think the Rams are at with this. I think they're going to take whichever offer he gets from the Raiders or the Giants and give him that offer. But in terms of trade capital, I think it's going to cost at least a second round pick.
Chris, what do you think? How much do you think it takes to get Stafford?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the Rodgers. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that it was a conditional first for Rodgers if certain things hit. Like maybe if they made the play, I don't remember. But I think it would be something like that. I think it would be 2 seconds, a second this year, a second next year. One of them potentially being a conditional first if the Giants were to reach a certain level of the playoffs, or a certain statistical threshold for Stafford. I could see something like that being what the Rams would want. Do I think the Giants should do that? Absolutely not. But if you're asking me what I think they're probably going to want, it's probably something like that. 2 seconds, maybe one that could be a conditional first based on certain, expect certain things if they hit.
Yeah, I would hate to give up 2 seconds. The simple fact, our second round pick this year is pretty much the back end of a first round pick. That's really the way I look at it. Because, again, if you're picking 34th, you would think you'd want to get back up into the first round at some point. You don't need to go up to the mid round, but you want to get to 29, 30, 31 to get the 5th year option. And then at that point, it's also why would somebody trade back into the second round and lose their 5th year option on a guy? But if the Giants are interested in a quarterback at that point, I think you have to trade back up into the first round so you do get the 5th year option. The quarterback carousel is insane. The only quarterback on the roster, a little bit of Joe Shane press comments that I was able to watch at work today, a little bit, is Tommy DeVito. And that's it. So obviously we got to bring in a quarterback. Something else I happen to see on the interwebs, and it's all full of rumors right now. Supposedly Aaron Rodgers reached out to the New York Giants. I don't know if any of you read these articles or not, that Aaron Rodgers reached out about the New York Giants quarterback situation. Anthony, is there any way possible Aaron Rodgers just switches locker rooms and plays for the New York Giants in 2025?
I think it's entirely possible. It's not entirely preferable for me. I don't want to see that happen, but I do think it's possible because I think that if they miss out on Stafford, Shane has made it extremely clear that he wants a veteran in the room. And of the veterans who are going to be available on the free agency market, I think the most likely to just take a one-year deal, so the least amount of long-term ramifications, would be Aaron Rodgers. So I think he'll make sense for the Giants from that standpoint. I think that there's a lot of other factors that you can add to the mix as to why he wouldn't make sense. And I think there's a go without saying personally in terms of the way that he creates media circuses. Yeah. And I also just don't think he's that good anymore. Like he's average to slightly above. Somebody tried to throw PFF grades in my face today. I'm like, dude, he ranked 18th on PFF. You're not proving anything. He's still slightly below average according to PFF as well as my eyeballs and everybody else's and the stats. So I don't know. The Rodgers thing, if it's really cheap, sure, but he's still Aaron Rodgers. He's still probably going to be one of the top quarterbacks on the market. He's probably going to command a decent salary. All that combined, there are more favorable options for me in free agency if I'm the Giants.
Agreed. Chris, anyway, possible one of your favorite quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bad Dog knows I've always been a big Rodgers fan. I think he's a jerk off the field, but on the field, he's very talented, super talented.
I thought you were just going to say he's a jerk off.
Me too.
I kind of sounded like that. I didn't mean to say that, but
I know
kind of a jerk off the field if I'm being honest. But on the field, he's tremendous. He's one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks of all time, 4-time MVP. But he's not, like Anthony said, he's not the player he once was. I still think he's good. I watched that Jet game at the end of the year against the Dolphins. He actually, and granted, it was the Dolphins. It was a game that didn't mean a whole lot, but he looked really good in that game. And I do think another year removed from the injury, you could actually sell me on, not that he's going to be MVP Rodgers, but that he could be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL next year. I could see that. I don't think that's insane to think that. And I would prefer that, if we're going to go that route, the alternative of trading draft capital for Matt Stafford and paying him market rate for what probably be an extension at $50 to $55 million a year. I don't know what the contract would be for Rodgers, but if it was like you were kind of alluding to, Bad Dog, like a 1-year deal or maybe a 2-year deal where you could easily get out after one, where you pay him $35 million for, well, I don't know what it would cost, but I would rather that route. I'm not advocating for either one, but I would probably prefer that. I don't know how realistic it is, and I don't really see why Rodgers would want to come here unless he just wants to like play in New York, because things didn't go too well for him with the New York Jets. And
what was his draw for the Jets though?
Well, the Jets, I actually thought the Jets had a really good roster. It didn't work out.
They're the Jets, Chris.
They are the Jets, but they won like 7 or 8 games the year before. They had a really good defense. You know, I at least understood that they could be a good team, kind of like what Favre did with the Vikings late in his career. With the Giants, I don't see that. So it's more on Rodgers than the Giants end for me. I don't see the appeal for Rodgers. I'd rather go to a team like the Steelers, maybe the Seahawks if there was an opening, like a team I felt like I could legitimately compete with. So that's why I don't really see it happening.
Adriana, you think could you see Aaron Rodgers in a Giants uniform in 2025?
No, I think the biggest appeal for Rodgers is that apparently he bought this like mansion in Montclair and probably just wants to stay in the area because he likes it. If you're Aaron Rodgers, it's the same thing with Matt Stafford. Like what is Joe Shane selling you on this team? There's no right guard. And for a 40-year-old man who's not the most mobile and who's not what Tom Brady was in his 40s, like I just don't think there's anything that would be that enticing for him. And I also just don't see it. Like, I don't think him and Dable would ever get along. Like, I think their personalities would never make sense. I think the same thing with even Shane Bowen. Like, I just could never see him coming to the Giants and it going well. And I think that based on everything that they have seen from him in the last couple of years, like personality wise, you know, even Joe, when he talked about like qualities that he wants in a quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers has none of those aside from his talent. So I don't see any world in what that happens. And also he's not going to be a Jameis Winston who's cool with $10 million a year. Like he's going to be out here asking for probably 20 plus, if not more than that. And I just think that would be a disaster for the Giants.
Yeah, I don't. Again, you talk about like these old aging quarterbacks. They're not going. If you bring them in here, it's for 1 year. And I don't. I think it was Anthony that mentioned. Maybe it was somebody else. If you bring them in here and they win 8 games, they're not the future. So you don't have a future still. Like, what are you going to do if you go 8-9 and miss the playoffs? Now you've missed out on a quarterback in next year's class because you're picking 17th or whatever it is. So it just, if we were legitimately, I'm going to bring up Daniel Jones just because he was our starting quarterback. If we were 7-2, 7-3, and Jones got hurt, okay, and missed the rest of the season, and we ended up losing the rest of our games. And I don't want to talk about Daniel Jones coming back here, but you're just saying, okay, the quarterback was playing well. Obviously, we lost. We were winning games because the quarterback played well. He went out with injury. We lost all our games. We're literally just need the damn quarterback. That was the position. But you see, there's so many holes in this roster. And again, Matthew Stafford will make us competitive. Aaron Rodgers would probably make us competitive. They would definitely be better quarterback play than we've had the last 6 years, even at their older age. But it doesn't make us better for the future. So we may have a year where we win 8 games. We may have a year where we win 9 games, kind of like 2022. What if we surprise everybody? But what does that mean 2 years from now?
Yeah.
That's what hurt us. That's why we are where we are now. They overachieved, and they thought they were set. And I thought they were set. I didn't know any different. I was hopeful, and it totally blew up in our face. The same situation can happen. That is the best case scenario. They come in here, they play well, and then 2 years later, we're 4-13 again. I don't understand the draw of bringing either Stafford or Rodgers in here. I think that you go with the Jameis Winston because, again, he's not in your future, and you know that. And he's going to cost a quarter of what these other guys do. Or you bring in Justin Fields because Justin Fields is young and has some upside, and he's also not going to cost a lot of money. So, again, I'm no GM. I always say there's a reason that Joe Shane's where he is and I am where I am, but it just doesn't make sense. The Giants have no concise direction if they bring one of these guys in here. I don't know what the hell they're going to do.
I don't love either option. I don't want the Giants to do either. The only reason why I said I'd prefer Rodgers to Stafford is simply because it hurts your future less because you don't have to trade draft capital to get him. And I don't think he would command as much in terms of the cap, but I don't want either one. I would much rather the Giants, like you said, go the route of a Jameis Winston and draft a quarterback at number 3 overall. And that's still what I expect them to do, but crazier things have happened.
I forgot who I left off on. Who did I ask that question to first? I'm losing my mind. This is what happens when you get old. Don't get old, guys. Don't get old. Crystal, I'll start with you. Gut feeling. 2025. The New York Giants starting quarterback is
Shedeur Sanders.
Oh.
Yeah, Shedeur Sanders. He may not be opening day. It might be a veteran for 4 weeks, but I'm not changing my opinion. I don't care about these mock drafts that are coming out right now. I see it. I saw that they're saying he's falling to 6 and 7 to the Jets. I don't believe it.
He wouldn't fall. Wouldn't go past the Raiders.
Yeah. He's going 3 to the Giants. That's what I think. I'm sticking with it.
Well, Adriana, gut feeling. The New York Giants starting quarterback in 2025 is
Justin Fields. I think that is one of the better options for them. If not him, Russell Wilson, but I don't think there's any chance that it's a rookie.
Wow.
Anthony, finish that sentence.
I don't think it'll be a rookie in week 1. I think a rookie will take over at some point, and I think it will be Shedeur Sanders, but I'm actually going to say Russell Wilson. I think that Russell Wilson has long wanted to be in New York. That's been reported, I feel like, for
since Jones.
8 years now. Yeah, for like a very long time. It seems like Russell Wilson has wanted to be in New York, and they met with him last year. I think the Giants regret not signing him last year. I think that they will reach back out to him, and I think there's a really good chance they get something done on a 1 or 2 year deal. But I do think they're going to draft Shedeur if he's there at number 3, even if they sign Russell Wilson. And I will say this. While I think they'll have a veteran in front of him and they'll do the bridge thing and Shedeur takes over at some point and not just in week 1, when you're looking at the 2 quarterbacks in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, I think there's a consensus here that Shedeur is the more pro-ready. So we keep talking about Joe Shane being in this win-now mode. And then there's these, kind of speculative rumors that maybe they're not that interested in Cam Ward. I think if that's true, if they are more interested in Shador than Cam Ward, it's because they think they can win in year one with Sanders, and they think that might be more challenging with more of a project high upside quarterback than Ward. So if they're unable to get the quarterback that they want in free agency or in the trade market, I think that they feel at least somewhat comfortable if they do take Sanders that he can start in week one. I know that Shane said he wants to get a veteran in the room, and I think they will get a veteran in the room. But I do think that Sanders is, in the minds of many analysts and scouts, equipped to play in his first season if he needs to.
It's funny. Oh,
The Russell Wilson, I think, is a good – out of all, like, the veteran quarterbacks, I think he's one that actually I could see actually being a mentor. I can't – because he kind of did it with Pittsburgh last year, right? Like, he signed on to that with Justin Fields. I could see him being like, yeah, I'm fine with you drafting Shador Sanders. I'll be the guy for a year. I can't see that with Stafford personally. And I don't think I could see that with Rodgers. So if they're going to go that route, I think Wilson could be a realistic alternative if they plan on drafting a quarterback with that third pick.
The funny thing is, Anthony said he's been wanting to be a Giant for like whatever it was, 6 or 8 years. I remember rumors about the Giants getting Russell Wilson before they drafted Daniel Jones. And Russell Wilson at the time was one of my favorite quarterbacks. I loved him. It just brings me that him thinking about 8 years ago or whatever, it just brings me to my favorite sports movie of all time in Major League when they say, wish we had him 2 years ago. We did 4 years ago then. That's just kind of what that reminded me of for whatever reason, because 6 years ago, Russell Wilson would have been great. Russell Wilson now, kind of in that veteran leadership mode. Would he cost as much as Jameis Winston? Like, I don't know what his market value is. But I do like that option better than the other two people that we opened the discussion with, the Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers, because like you mentioned, Chris, it's less of a blow in the future than bringing in a guy like Matt Stafford, who obviously would have to get some kind of contract extension to be here. And as good as he is, you don't really want these guys playing into their 40s. I can't see it happening, but stranger things have happened without question, especially with this freaking team. So
I think Greg's got a good question in the chat. He says, question though, which current quarterback had a mentor? That's a good question, because the league has kind of changed from the old method of doing things, but there's plenty. Pat Mahomes had a mentor, right? Pat Mahomes had Alex Smith. Jordan Love had Aaron Rodgers. So there's Jalen Hurts was a backup his first year. So he was behind Carson Wentz. So there's plenty.
They had Eli.
Yeah, Daniel had Eli. So yeah, it's not as prevalent as it used to be, but it still exists.
Mm-hmm. Also, if we get Russ Wilson, we're going to agree as a group that we're all going to say Giants country, let's ride? Is that going to be a thing?
Oh, I hate that slogan. I'll get on board with it if he's a Giant. It is what it is. But
I'll get on board with it if he wins some damn games.
I just wonder if he's going to come and try and like rebrand it into something else. Like, is it going to be, Giant City, big city, like Big Apple?
It's going to be something super corny about like the Big Apple. It's going to be something super corny.
If he does that and he signs with the Giants and comes up with some sort of slogan, we're making merch immediately. We have to.
Yeah,
you got to do it. But I'm afraid that. Well, I'm a dad, so I like some dad jokes without question. Problem is, let's ride. The Giants have been falling off that ride for years, so I don't know what the hell is going on here. Man, I'm excited to see what happens at the combine, even though the top guys are going to go. It's always interesting. I am looking forward to a guy like Jalen Milroe, who supposedly is going to run the 40. I don't know if he's going to throw. It's hard to find because, again, I was messing around at work. I didn't have a lot of time to look at stuff. I tried to find the guys that were going to throw. And I mentioned Cameron Ward was undecided. Now it seems like Anthony mentioned off camera, he's got an injury, so he's obviously not going to. But is there somebody, we'll start with you, Adriana. Is there somebody, because you guys are going to know better than me. I guess my answer to this would be Jalen Milroe. Is there somebody you are looking forward to watching at the combine?
So what I saw is that I think it's everyone in that second group, like Milroe, Dart, Howard, they're all going to throw. So I really like Will Howard. I watched some Ohio State games towards the end of the season and liked what I saw from him. So he's a guy that I like and would be curious to see how he does with different wide receivers. Since he wasn't at the Senior Bowl, I didn't get to see him there. So he's a guy that I think I would be excited about. And, if the Giants wanted to get him in round 4 or something, like if they waited that late to get a quarterback, I think I'd be on board with him.
Anthony, is there somebody you're really looking forward to seeing at the Underwear Olympics? I like calling them that because that's what they are.
No one in particular, but I'm just excited to watch the wide receivers go because I think those drills are fun to watch when they do the gauntlet. A lot of them run the 40, a lot of them do the verticals and the broad jump. So I just like watching the wide receivers. It's my favorite position to watch in football as well. Like when I, consume football, usually my favorite players are wide receivers. I just think it's a fun position. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. And if I had to pick one guy in that group, it'd be Trey Harris out of Ole Miss because I think he's a freakish athlete and a really good player. And he was the quarterback of Malik Neighbors in high school. So I'm keeping a close eye on him, wondering if that connection can help him get on the New York Giants.
Chris, who are you looking forward to seeing?
Like Adrian, I actually like Will Howard too. I don't like him as a, first or second round pick. But the 2 or 3 times I got to watch his full games, I was actually more impressed with him than I thought I was going to be. I think he could be a solid pro quarterback. Not a superstar, but a solid pro quarterback. So, yeah, he's a guy I'll keep my eye on. But you know me, Bad Dog. There's not one player in particular that I'm like foaming at the mouth for, especially because my mind is so quarterback driven this year. And because I so strongly believe we're either going to take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So that's really what I'm fixated on. But I like the 300-pound men. I always get excited to see the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen run the 40s. That's what I get most excited about during the combine, getting to see these 320-pound defensive tackles run like they're, 180 pounds. So I always love watching the big guys go at it.
Yeah, without question. And a name that's been coming up a lot lately, I've seen it everywhere. I see it in the chat now. And again, Anthony, I'll start with you because I know you do a lot of extensive research on these quarterbacks. Tyler Shuck out of Louisville is a name that I just hear more and more and more and more. You looking forward to seeing? What do you know about him? I don't know nothing about him. I'll be honest. I only knew that because people are bringing him up, and I'm like, I don't know who. I knew nothing about this kid. So, what do you think? Is he got what is his potential? Even if you know, I don't know how much you know about Tyler Shuck. No.
I'm not.
I know a little bit about him. I haven't gotten to watch a ton of him. I've seen highlights, but I'm pretty sure. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was like a really high recruit coming out of high school, like a 5-star recruit. And then I think he suffered injuries at the collegiate level. So I think that's why like a lot of people are drawn to him because he has like good physical tools. But the guy's 26 years old. Like I don't know. Like. Maybe he'll blow us away at the combine, but I'm not going to bank on it. I feel like he's probably going to be a 4th or 5th round prospect. But I think that's why a lot of people you've started to see his name creep into conversation,
right?
Because when he came out of high school, he was a really highly thought of prospect.
Like I said, I know nothing about him. I never even heard the name. It's kind of like Daniel Jones, except for I don't expect Shuck to be going 6th overall. I never heard of Daniel Jones until the day before the draft when they said the Giants were going to draft. I never heard of him. I don't watch Duke football. Who the hell does watch Duke football? I don't even think Duke alum watch Duke football. They watch Duke basketball. So I thought that was a big joke. And obviously it wasn't. But, it is what it is. The draft is.
Who's the tight end that I love? He's going to be a top 10 pick, right? What's his name?
Tyler Warren.
Oh, I love that guy. Not that the Giants are going to pick him, but I'm excited to watch him. I'm a big fan of his. I like him. Yeah.
So the draft is 2 months from today, right? Is that what I get the dates confused? I know it's the last Thursday in April. It is. I know it's the last Thursday in April is the first round. That I know. I forgot the date though. So Chris, let's start with you. Who is the one guy that I don't know? Maybe there's really no answer to this. Who's a guy that if the Giants took at 3, you'd be like pissed?
Yeah, are we talking realistic? Because
yeah, realistically, they're not going to take Jackson Dart 3.
I was going to say,
you never put anything by the Giants, though.
Yeah.
Anything's realistic with this team. But
it's really hard for me to answer this question if we're talking in realistic terms because
Abdul Carter's there at 3.
I want him.
They don't take him.
Yeah. I got to see what they do in free agency and how they build the team before I could really say what pick would really piss me off. But I'm not going to be fuming if they take Mason Graham. I think he's a tremendous player. So I'm not going to be screaming if they do it. And I can't, like, realistically speaking, I can't see them not taking one of the two quarterbacks, Abdul Carter, Hunter, or maybe a guy like Mason Graham. So real, unless they take somebody outside of that, which I don't really see, I don't think I'd be flipping out. Now, if they took Jackson Dart, I'd snap my computer in half and I'd have to buy a new one. But I don't see something like that happening. I think it'd be one of those 5 names I mentioned. Obviously, some more likely than others. But
I remember the night we did Daniel Jones. I remember the headphones coming off your head. And
yeah.
Dave Gettleman should be fired. We'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't care. Get Joe Shane out of here. The first thing smoking would be insane. Adriana, we're going to flip this question. Who at number 3, if the Giants took him, would you be super excited about if they got him at number 3?
Carter and Ward would be my top 2 that I would be absolutely psyched about. Like, might even consider buying a jersey. I would be that thrilled. And I don't think I have any current player jerseys. They're all former players.
You're smart.
That happens to me
Not
too.
making that mistake anymore. I bought Saquon and OBJ and Jones.
I got Saquon. I have an OBJ. I have Saquon. I have McKinney. I have a Jones. I didn't buy that. Somebody gave that to me. OGR, our good buddy.
Yeah, give me one too.
Yeah. Big. But yeah, all those Giants I have, they're no longer Giants. Anthony, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Adriana. Giants are picking 3rd. Who is the guy that you just hope is available and you're going to be, yes, got that guy?
For me, that's Cam Ward. He's been my favorite quarterback in this draft class since last year because I really liked him in the middle rounds of last year's draft when he initially declared. And I was hoping that if the Giants didn't go quarterback at 6, they would take him in the 3rd or 4th round. He didn't do that. He goes to Miami, has a historic season. If he's there at number 3, that's where I want the Giants to draft. But I'll answer the other question as well, who I would be pissed about. Because I was looking through prospects and I saw one. If they take a running back, if they draft Ashton Genty, number 3 overall, this fan base.
That's the one thing, Anthony. You have nothing to worry about. Joe Shane would never. He is so analytically driven. He is so.
I don't know. This would be like the overcorrection, like the Saquon thing happened and he's like, oh my God, I got to fix this. I got to get the playmaker. Maybe there's a world where he thinks Genty's the best player available. And that's not outside of the realm of possibility. I mean, the guy is one of the best running back prospects ever.
It's not outside of the possibility.
Don't put that out there.
He's the PPA, but he's not taking. There's no way he's taking a running back at 3 overall.
If they draft Ashton Genty at 3rd, expect Genty to be an Eagle in 2030. That's the way we would do that crap, right?
Yeah.
And the Giants fan base jumping off a cliff. Most of us.
Oh my God! Yeah, the rest of us haven't already jumped off that cliff. It's insane. That is so. Oh my God, that would be awful. That'd be awful to do that. But Anthony, I'm with you. I've been a Cameron Ward guy since last year. I really like Cameron Ward. I don't think he would have been like the top 6 quarterbacks. I think he would have been like after Bo Nix, Michael Penix, those type of guys. But I do like him. And this year he was definitely my QB1 going into the year. Like I said, even on Twitter, I did this last April, like right after the draft, and I was just like, I'll play along. The first pick of the Giants at 2025 was Cameron Ward. I thought he would have a good year going to Miami because they're a better program than Washington State was, and the ACC is not as tough as the Pac-12 was last year. They had a really good, not last year, the year before. They had a great conference, and there was a lot of good quarterbacks came out of the Pac. Caleb Williams came out of the Pac-12. Michael Penix came out of the Pac-12. Bo Nix came out of the Pac-12. So that was full of quarterbacks. So yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to say the least. And I don't know, man. The Giants just, I got nothing, man. I got nothing. I got nothing. I don't know what the hell they're going to do. Next week, I think we will start. I know this. 2 weeks from today, we will have a ton. There won't be rumors.
Agency, right?
Yeah, free agency starts March 10th. 2 weeks from now, our show will be March 12th. We'll definitely have stuff.
And doesn't the early periods like people hear about it like 4 days before, right? Like
4 days?
Maybe
I thought it was Monday.
It's the Monday morning is when tampering period starts, and then the new league year is on Wednesday.
So 2 days before,
yeah. So 2 days, but obviously we'll know all this.
We'll know by then, if they're
and that will also give us more of a concise opinion, at least a more educated inference on what we're going to do when it comes to the draft. And like I said, when we get to that point, we get to the middle of March or the end of March, maybe we'll start doing a couple of mock drafts just just for fun. I'm going to do this one real quick, and then we're going to get out of here. Money Mike, I'm glad that showed up like this. Who has the best arm out of Ewers, Dart, and McCord?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Are we just talking arm strength? When you say best arm, do you mean accuracy? Like, are we just talking pure arm strength? Because if you're talking pure arm strength, and I haven't watched a ton of these guys, I've seen a little bit. I've seen probably 2 Texas games last year with Ewers. I've seen a handful of Dart games. I mean, McCord was a really good prospect at Ohio State. He had a good year this year at Syracuse, when he went to a lesser program. But
a lot of people like McCord.
Just based off arm strength, I guess I would slightly lean Ewers. But again, I haven't done a ton of work on these guys. I know Ewers has a big arm. So I guess I'd go Ewers. But, yeah, I don't love any one of those quarterbacks for the Giants.
I think Dart's the best quarterback of those 3. But, again, that's just my opinion. Who do you think has the best arm? Adriana.
Yeah, I was going to say probably the same Ewers. I mean, maybe Dart. I don't know if that's been one of the bigger complaints out of him. I do know that Joe Shane loves the SEC. So I feel like out of those 3, he'd be more likely to go for Ewers and Dart, just knowing that they played. Is Texas? It is SEC.
Texas is now they are in the SEC, yes. This year they went to the SEC. Yep.
Okay. That's what I thought. But obviously Dart at Ole Miss, we know that Joe is a big SEC guy. And of course, our buddy Eli, who apparently has been helping them scout quarterbacks, has spoken very highly of Jackson Dart. But I haven't watched a ton of film on all of these guys yet to be able to confidently say that it's definitely Ewers. I think that's the more likely of the 3.
Yeah, and I want to hammer home because I see one person in the chat said Ewers is trash. I don't like Ewers, but if we're just answering the question just strictly based off arm strength, I would lean Ewers. If I had to pick the best quarterback of the 3, I'd probably pick Jackson Dart. Yeah.
Anthony, what do you think? Best arm out of those 3?
If you're combining arm strength and accuracy, I really like Dart, and I really like his ability to make off-platform throws, and I think that takes a lot of arm strength. One thing that I'll say, though, about Quinn Ewers, I don't know if you guys saw this report. Apparently, he played the majority of last season with a torn oblique, and so a lot of the problems that he ran into last year in terms of accuracy or whatever, he was playing through a really significant injury, and I think that there's some chatter that if he performs well at the combine, throws the ball well now that he's healthy, he could end up moving up a lot of draft boards because people will evaluate his final collegiate season with a little bit of an asterisk next to it now that it's been revealed he played with such a significant injury. So I think that's food for thought, something that's interesting to note as we get to the combine workouts throughout the weekend.
Yeah, and there's no question. An oblique muscle obviously is very important when you're throwing the freaking football, since it's attached to the side of your freaking waist there, whatever, the side of your abdomen, whatever. It's something I work on very hard to get. Obliques are almost impossible to get. I don't even think obliques exist unless you're like a superstar athlete, but I don't know. With that said, that'll bring us to another edition of Giants Collective. As always, I appreciate you guys and lady doing the show with me. It's a lot of fun. We're gonna have a lot more fun, a lot more stuff to talk about it. I enjoy rumors, but it gets to be a point where I'm sick of them, and now I just want to see some stuff. I want to see some stuff happen. So we're going to get a good look at some of these guys in the combine. We can talk about what we see next week, and maybe we'll have a clearer picture on what the Giants are going to target in free agency. But there's no question 2 weeks from now, it's going to start to go really quick. Once we have some players to talk about how we feel about the signings and everything else, we think they're going to do in a draft. So definitely looking forward to that without question. So with that said, for Adriana, Anthony, and Atena, enjoy the rest of your night, guys, and we'll see you next week. We are out. Peace.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.